You ever see your car on Facebook before the cops even call you? I did. I was halfway through folding laundry in my living room when my phone lit up with a notification from a local neighborhood group, some posts that had already racked up over 200 comments. At first I thought it was another cat stuck in a tree or maybe someone griping about fireworks at 2 in the morning again. But no, it was my damn car. Front end crushed like a beer can, airbags blown like birthday balloons, and the caption said something like, "Red Mustang wrecked near Maple and 11th, hope they're okay." Except I wasn't driving it. And I sure as hell wasn't okay. My heart dropped so hard I felt sick. That car was more than metal and rubber. I'd spent nearly 7 years saving up for that beauty, a '94 Red Mustang GT with the leather interior and original stereo. My baby, as people like to joke. But they didn't know the truth. That car was freedom. It was therapy. It was every ounce of self-respect I'd stitched together after my divorce. And the jackass behind the wheel? My 26-year-old baby brother, Kevin. Let me tell you something about Kevin. He was the kind of guy who'd charm your friends, borrow your tools, promise to return them, and then you'd see them on his porch covered in rust 2 years later. My mom calls him free-spirited, which is a real polite way of saying he's allergic to responsibility. Still lives with mom. No real job, just odd gigs that somehow always fall through. I'd spent most of my adult life picking up after him, fixing his credit screw-ups, giving him rides, helping him apply for jobs he never showed up to. You know the type. Golden boy of the family. Mom's sweet little boy who could never do anything truly wrong. Except now he'd wrecked my car. Without asking. Without telling me. I didn't hear from him that whole day. No call. No text. Nothing. Just the image of my wrecked Mustang over and over, burned into my retinas every time I blinked. I called his phone. Straight to voicemail. I called Mom. She hadn't heard from him either, or so she claimed. I wasn't sure if I believed her. The police finally called around 5 p.m., just when I was about to drive over to Mom's myself. They confirmed what I already knew, that Kevin had taken the car, crashed it near the intersection, and was now at home with only minor injuries. He's lucky, the officer said, like that was supposed to mean something to me. He should have been more hurt. Airbags saved him. I got in my backup car, a 10-year-old Civic with a cracked windshield and a smell like old fries, and drove to Mom's, trying to keep my hands from shaking on the wheel. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew it wasn't going to be polite. I was livid. And under the rage, there was this ugly, gnawing heartbreak. Like watching someone kick a puppy you'd raised from birth. That car had gotten me through so many bad days, and now it was crumpled junk. I parked in the driveway and spotted Kevin sitting on the porch, sipping something out of a red plastic cup like he was relaxing after mowing the lawn. His face lit up when he saw me, and I swear on everything holy, he grinned. This slow, lazy grin that hit me like a punch in the throat. "Hey, Ratch," he said, as casual as a weather report. "I was just about to call you." "Were you?" I asked, walking toward him. "Before or after Facebook told me my car was dead?" He shrugged. And then the words that followed, well, they're probably burned into my brain forever. "Relax. You'll forgive me. You always do." Like it was nothing. Like the years of sacrifice, the months I skipped dinners out to make that insurance payment, the hours I spent waxing that car every Saturday meant absolutely nothing. And you know what the worst part was? I could see it in his face. He believed it. He really believed forgiveness was inevitable, like the sun rising or Mom covering for him. I opened my mouth to reply, but just then the front door swung open and Mom appeared, apron on, holding a dish rag like some sitcom mom who'd stepped out of a '90s rerun. "Rachel, honey," she said with that sweet, worn-out smile she always put on when things got tense. "Let's not start yelling, okay? He's fine. You're fine. The car is just a thing, sweetheart." I stopped walking. Just a thing. My fists clenched so tight I felt my nails bite into my palms. I looked at Kevin, still smirking like this was all some joke that would blow over in a day or two, and I looked at Mom, already preparing to set another table for dinner like this was just one more oopsie from her golden boy. And in that moment, I felt it click. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to argue. I was going to burn this entire damn narrative down. I stood there on the porch with the wreckage of my trust still fresh in my chest, watching my little brother slouch in a patio chair like nothing in the world was heavier than his drink. Mom waved me inside, all cheerful and peacekeeping, trying to fold this whole thing up like a wrinkled bedsheet. And I followed her because I wasn't about to have it out in the driveway like some daytime TV disaster. But I already knew what she was going to say. I'd heard the script before, read it 1,000 ways over the last 20 years, ever since Kevin figured out he could mess up and someone else would cushion the fall. That someone had always been Mom. And when she couldn't manage it, that someone was usually me. I sat at the edge of the kitchen table while she poured sweet tea like we were about to chat about coupons and church. The same table where, years ago, I'd cried over my college acceptance letter while Kevin lit a firecracker under Dad's recliner. The same table where I paid the overdue electricity bill once, back in 2018, because Kevin forgot to send the check from his freelance money and Mom was too embarrassed to ask anyone else. "You're really upset," she said, the way someone might tell you the weather was cloudy. Not sympathetic, not urgent. Just an observation. Like she was noticing a smudge on the counter. "No," I replied, arms crossed tightly, holding myself together by sheer will. "I'm beyond upset. I don't even know what this is anymore." She sat down across from me and reached for my hand, but I didn't give it. I wasn't ready for the soft touch. Not today. Not after seeing my Mustang, a car I'd worked double shifts for, passed up vacations for, fought tooth and nail to maintain, smashed into a light pole like it was some toy. "Honey, it's just a car," she said with that tired tone, the one that carried years of practiced conflict avoidance. "What matters is that Kevin is safe, and you're okay. Cars can be replaced." "No, Mom," I said, voice flat as a desert, "that car can't be replaced. And even if it could, it's not about the damn car." She blinked again, and I could see the mental retreat behind her eyes. That slow crawl back to her usual reasoning. She didn't want this fight. She didn't want to see Kevin as anything other than her charming boy who made some bad choices, but would eventually grow out of it. Never mind the fact that he was 26 and still acted like an unhousebroken teenager. "It meant something to me," I went on, staring her down. "That car was mine. It was stability. It was pride. It was proof I could rebuild my life after everything fell apart. Do you remember how I was after the divorce? Do you remember me crying over paperwork and sleeping on your couch for 3 months? That car was the first thing I bought after I got back on my feet. And he took it without even asking." She opened her mouth to reply, but I kept going, because if I stopped, I'd either cry or scream. "I bought that Mustang for $6,000. Well, technically 5, but with tax it was 7. Or was it 8? I paused, shaking my head. "Doesn't matter. The point is, every dollar came from me. No help. No favors. Just my sweat." Out in the living room, Kevin coughed a loud, fake sound, like he was trying to remind us he still existed. I looked over, and there he was, half lounging on the couch with his phone in one hand and a smirk already loading on his face like a weapon. "Come on, sis," he said, as if we were discussing some inside joke from childhood. "You'll calm down. You always do." There was that line again. Like some broken record. Like forgiveness was a built-in feature of my DNA. Like I hadn't spent half my life learning to patch over the holes his recklessness left behind. I stood slowly, quietly, and walked over to the coat I'd draped on the back of the chair. From the inside pocket, I pulled out a folded piece of paper, stiff and white, freshly printed at the FedEx store that afternoon. Without a word, I walked to him and dropped it in his lap. He glanced down at it, not even trying to hide the boredom on his face. "What's this?" he asked, opening the page lazily. "Oh, look, a bill." "How dramatic." "Repair estimate," I said. $9,000. Itemized. With the mechanic's stamp. He whistled, low and sarcastic. "Damn. You really went the whole 9 yards, huh?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because for a split second, his smirk faltered. He held up the paper like it offended him, like it was covered in some stench. "Good luck with that," he said, snorting. "You're not getting a dime out of me. But I gotta hand it to you. That's some next-level pettiness, Ratch." I turned away without another word, because I already knew something he didn't. He thought this was petty? He had no idea what was coming next. Kevin always thought the storm was over once the yelling stopped. He believed silence meant surrender, that my quiet was just me cooling down, as he liked to say, like I was some malfunctioning air conditioner that needed time to reset. But this time, the quiet meant war. And the thing about my kind of war is that it's not loud. It's not showy. It's deliberate, focused, and patient. The kind of war you don't even see coming until it knocks on your front door with a legal envelope in hand. The morning after I gave him the estimate, I woke up not with rage, but with resolve. I made coffee like it was any other Sunday, but instead of my usual mindless scrolling or laundry folding, I opened my laptop and typed civil liability for unauthorized use of vehicle. I read for hours, pouring through small claims court threads, state traffic laws, insurance loopholes, and forums where pissed-off people like me shared what little justice the system allowed. I wasn't looking to ruin Kevin. I knew better than to expect actual remorse, but I wanted him to feel it. Not just the weight of the damage, but the understanding that he wasn't untouchable. Not anymore. That's when I remembered something he'd done a few years back. It was small at the time, but it gnawed at me now in a different way. He'd signed up for a gas station credit card using my name and birth date. I caught it on my credit report before any charges hit, and he'd brushed it off with a stupid grin and I didn't think it'd go through anyway. Mom called it a misunderstanding. I'd called the company and shut it down, too tired to deal with the drama of pushing back harder. But now I thought, if he could use my identity without flinching, why couldn't I take a page from that same book? I wouldn't fake anything. I wouldn't need to. The truth was more than enough. First, I started gathering everything I could. I pulled screenshots from Facebook, pictures of the accident, comments from people who said they saw some guy crawling out of the red Mustang. I found a neighbor's Ring camera video on the community page that caught him peeling out of the driveway at 7 in the morning without a seatbelt. I scrolled back through my messages and pulled up an old thread where he joked about taking the car if I ever left the keys in sight. Next came the formal estimate. I called up Marcus, my mechanic for nearly 10 years, the same guy who rebuilt the transmission on the Mustang and kept my Civic limping through 2 failed emissions tests. He took one look at the damage photos and said, "Jesus, what did he hit? A building?" Then he agreed to write up a full evaluation. He gave me 2 versions, one for repairs and another for total replacement value. I took both. Then, I walked into the county clerk's office and filed a small claims suit. The clerk barely looked up when I handed over the paperwork. Just stamped it, took my payment, and handed me a court date. I walked out of there lighter than I'd felt in weeks. Meanwhile, Kevin thought it had all blown over. He went back to his usual rhythm of couch lounging and Instagram story reposting. I saw him once in the kitchen 2 days later, eating cereal straight out of the box, and he gave me a wink like we were in on some shared secret. I smiled back, but not because I felt anything close to peace. I smiled because his ignorance was delicious. He thought he'd won. Mom was quiet too, trying not to pick a side out loud, but I could feel her leaning his way like she always did. She made excuses for him in passing, little things like he didn't mean to take it that far, or at least he didn't get seriously hurt. But I wasn't biting. I was too far down the rabbit hole of doing this my way. The old Rachel, the one who gave in, let things slide, carried the family burden on her back like a cross. She was gone. For days after I filed, the process server delivered the papers to Mom's house. Kevin was in the driveway when it happened, holding a rake he probably hadn't touched in 15 minutes. I didn't witness it myself, but I heard about it from my cousin Julie, who lives 2 doors down and saw the whole thing from her porch. She said he opened the envelope, read the first page, and then shouted something so loud the neighbor's dog started barking. He threw the rake, stomped inside, and slammed the door hard enough to shake the window panes. When I got home that night, he was already pacing in the living room. Mom sat on the recliner like she was waiting for someone to defuse a bomb. The envelope was on the table, open, the pages crumpled from his sweaty hands. "What the hell is this?" he yelled the second I stepped through the door, like I'd just burned down his bedroom. I dropped my bag by the chair and looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something new in his eyes. Not anger. Not arrogance. But fear. Not fear of me, not exactly, but fear of what I'd stopped doing. I wasn't playing along anymore. I wasn't folding under pressure. And for the first time in his life, he had no idea what that meant. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I just said, calm and cold, as ice water down his back, consequences. And then I walked past him, into the kitchen, like I hadn't just detonated his safety net with a single word. I should have known the real explosion wouldn't come from Kevin. No, the person who really lost it when the court papers landed wasn't the one who wrecked my car, but the one who always cleaned up after his messes, even if it meant sweeping my feelings under the rug and acting like that rug didn't look like a damn mountain. Mom. My mother, my soft-spoken, peacekeeping, guilt-tripping mother. The same woman who once cried when I told her I wouldn't be home for Thanksgiving because I had to work, but barely blinked when Kevin forgot her birthday 2 years in a row. "You're taking your own brother to court," she shrieked, not screamed exactly, but sharp and frantic, as though I'd confessed to setting fire to a church. "Are you insane, Rachel? Do you know what people will say?" "What people, Mom?" I asked flatly, gripping my coffee mug so tightly I thought the handle might snap off in my hand. "Who exactly is going to care that I held someone accountable for wrecking my life?" She didn't answer that. She just shook her head and sat down with a heavy sigh, the kind she used when her soap operas got interrupted by weather alerts. "I just can't believe you'd do something like this." "He's your brother." "No," I corrected her, not gently, not anymore. "He's a grown-ass man who stole my car, crashed it, and laughed in my face. I warned him. I gave him a chance. This is what happens when you treat people like doormats for 20 years and finally they decide to put up a fence." "You sound bitter," she said, like it was some sort of diagnosis, like it explained away everything with one neat little label. "I am bitter," I replied, standing taller. "You raised me to be responsible, remember? To be the one who shows up, the one who pays her bills, the one who doesn't make excuses. But the second I expect that same standard from Kevin, suddenly I'm the villain." She opened her mouth to protest, but we both heard the front door creak open, followed by heavy, deliberate footsteps. Kevin walked in, eyes red and puffy like he'd been crying or pretending to. He looked tired, slouched, almost theatrical in his sadness. "Can we not fight?" he said softly, his voice cracking just enough to make it sound like something was breaking inside him. "Please? I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I don't want to lose my sister over this." That line, "I don't want to lose my sister," was designed to crack me open like an egg. I could feel it, the manipulation, smooth and well-practiced, like a musician hitting the exact note needed to sway the room. And Mom, predictably, melted right into it. She turned to me, eyes wide with hope, hands clasped together like some kind of emotional hostage. "Rachel, look at him," she said breathlessly. "He's sorry. Just talk it through. Please." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But I didn't. I held it together, because I was playing a different game now. A longer one. One with rules they didn't know I'd rewritten. That's when they sprung the dinner on me. I got a call from Aunt Lisa saying she was bringing a pie, and Uncle Mike asked if I still liked roast chicken. Apparently Mom had sent out the bat signal to the entire family, framing this as some reconciliation feast, a chance for everyone to heal and move forward and remember what really matters. All the usual sentimental garbage people dig up when they're trying to sweep injustice under the tablecloth and call it dessert. I showed up out of curiosity more than anything, and sure enough, the dining room looked like something out of a Thanksgiving Hallmark special. Candles, folded napkins, actual name cards at each seat. Kevin was seated dead center, like the guest of honor at his own redemption arc. Everyone was waiting for me to forgive him. I could see it in their eyes, some hopeful, some desperate, and a few judgmental, like how dare you drag us into this when it could have stayed a dirty little secret behind family doors. Kevin stood up, hands wringing nervously, and launched into some weak, vaguely tearful monologue about how he never meant to hurt anyone and how he realized now that he'd taken things for granted. Aunt Lisa dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Uncle Mike gave a proud little nod. Mom looked ready to start clapping. I waited for him to finish, then stood up slowly, pretending to let his words sink in like warm sunlight. Okay, I said finally, I'll cancel the suit. The room sighed, like a balloon had deflated. Mom reached for my hand and squeezed it. Kevin even smiled. Only for a moment, though. But I continued, pulling a manila folder from my purse and placing it in front of Kevin like I was dealing out a final card in a poker game. I want something in return. The smile froze on his face. He opened the folder, his expression flickering from smug to confused to pale in a matter of seconds. Inside was a contract, simple and airtight, drawn up by a lawyer friend of mine from college who now owed me a favor after I helped her move apartments during a heatwave. The contract spelled out clear terms. Kevin would repay the cost of the vehicle in monthly installments over the next 2 years. If he missed even one payment, he forfeited ownership of his car, his beat-up, barely functioning sedan, which he still owed money on. It was poetic, and it was fair. Coldly, legally fair. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, voice hoarse, looking up at me like I'd just betrayed the Geneva Convention. I didn't blink. "This," I said, nodding at the contract, "is forgiveness, with terms." The ink on that contract was barely dry before the storm hit full force. Kevin's hands were shaking when he signed it, the pen trembling between his fingers like he was being forced to confess to some awful crime he didn't commit, though we both knew damn well he was the one who put himself in this position. Mom's voice cracked like lightning across the room, high-pitched and sharp as she stood up, pointing one trembling finger at me like I was the villain in some courtroom drama. "This is evil, Rachel," she shouted, her voice quivering with betrayal. "You're punishing him like a stranger. Like some deadbeat off the street." I looked at her and didn't flinch, didn't even blink, because I had already made my peace with being the villain in this family if it meant someone was finally drawing a line in the damn sand. "No," I said, calmly but without softness. "This isn't evil, Mom. This is accountability. Something he's never had to face, and maybe if he had years ago, we wouldn't be here now." Kevin said nothing, but his eyes were hot and watery, a mix of anger and humiliation and something else I couldn't quite name, maybe recognition. Maybe, for the first time, he saw what it meant when someone finally stopped letting him off the hook. He didn't argue. He didn't storm out. He just signed the damn paper and walked out of the room like a man heading to his own sentencing. The next few months were quiet. Unnaturally so. Kevin avoided me, barely looked me in the eye when we crossed paths at Mom's or ran into each other in town. Mom barely spoke to me unless it was about groceries or weather or something else so emotionally neutral it could have been delivered by a robot. The family dinners dried up. The phone calls slowed to a trickle. But I wasn't surprised, and honestly, I wasn't even that upset. It felt cleaner than before. At least now everyone's silence had honesty behind it. Kevin made the first few payments. $50 here, $75 there. Always late, never quite the right amount, but I gave him leeway because I wanted to see if he would try. And for a little while, it seemed like maybe he would. But then 1 month passed with nothing. Then another. I sent him a reminder, polite, professional, like it came from a collections agency. He ignored it. Month 3 came and went, and still nothing. So I enforced the contract. I filed the paperwork, took the documentation to small claims, and a week later, I had legal ownership of his car. It was a battered, wheezing old sedan that coughed black smoke and smelled like fast food wrappers, but it was his. And now it was mine. The day I showed up with the tow truck, Kevin didn't even come outside. Mom did, though, standing on the porch in her slippers, arms folded like she was shielding her child from some cosmic injustice. "This is petty," she hissed as the driver hooked the chains under the rusting chassis. "You're punishing him for being young. For being stupid." "No," I replied, never once taking my eyes off the truck. "I'm teaching him that apologies without change are just noise." She didn't respond. Just stood there as the car was hauled away, her disappointment heavy as a storm cloud. And I didn't look back, because I knew if I did, I might crumble. And I wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. But here's the twist they didn't see coming, and probably never will unless they're watching this, or someone tells them secondhand. I didn't keep the car. I didn't drive it or gloat or use it as a trophy. I sold it for whatever I could get, which wasn't much, just under $800, and then I donated every penny to a local nonprofit that runs driving safety programs for teenagers. They hold crash simulations, teach real defensive driving skills, and even work with families impacted by drunk driving and reckless behavior. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the hurt to mean something. I wanted the shattered glass and twisted metal and ruined memories to matter in some way, to help someone avoid what I went through, not just the accident, but the gaslighting, the guilt, the family fractures no one wants to admit are even there. A few weeks later, on a gray, chilly Sunday, I drove to the cemetery. I parked next to the small hill where my father was buried, where the stone was worn but still solid, and I sat down in the cold grass like I had so many times before when I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't interrupt or defend or deflect. "Remember how you told me to never let anyone walk all over me, even family?" I said quietly, brushing a leaf off the edge of the headstone. "I finally listened, Dad. I finally did it." I sat there for a while, just breathing, just feeling the wind tug at my sleeves and the weight of everything that had happened settle into my bones like cold rain. But as I stood to leave, I hesitated. I turned back toward the grave, one last time, and the words slipped out before I could stop them. But maybe I went too far. Maybe I didn't have to go all the way. Maybe I lost more than I fixed. And maybe I did. Maybe, in trying to repair what Kevin broke, I cracked the whole damn foundation instead. The silence in our family grew heavier after that. The calls stopped completely. Holidays became awkward, staggered, or just skipped altogether. Mom didn't speak to me for nearly a year. But I still ask myself over and over, was I right? Or did I just destroy what little family I had left? Would you have done the same?